Welcome, Legion of the Lariat. This is a very special episode. This is our Summerslam 92 review episode. Joined with me for the first time on this show. We have been on his a few times. But joining us all the way from Minnesota, the host of Coal Mine, a great human being, and an okay-looking man, Mr. Brock. How you doing today, buddy?
Dude, I love that intro. You even
I gotta do it big sometimes, man.
You settle for okay looking. That feels like that's above and beyond after we were just talking about our fears of looking at ourselves naked in the bathroom. So yeah, I'll take that as a huge compliment. Dude, I'm stoked to be on, man. It's been so much fun. Just you and I connecting as we go through the podcast stuff. Learning a ton from each other. Having you on's been a blast. You're one of our favorite people to get on there. If it goes about a month without having you on, I'm always sending you a message like, dude, when do you come back on? We need to get you on here. Yeah.
I'm happy to have you on here just for this, man. This is awesome. And little known fact, Mr. Brock over here is also about to embark on his own wrestling journey into the business with the Academy, it's called, right? Is Mr. Anderson's, or in this case, Mr. Anderson's Pro Wrestling Academy. That's also in Minnesota or is it in Wisconsin? I always forget.
Nope, Minnesota, right in St. Paul. Yeah, it's been a crazy journey getting here because calling me a casual wrestling fan is going a bit far as how I got into it. I mean, I watched wrestling growing up in middle school and then kind of got out of it. And then last January, a friend invited me to an indie match. And I was like, yeah, I'll go check this out. I've heard good things. You know, people always talk about them. What the heck? I brought my kid and his friends. And you're like a deer in a headlight at first. Like, what am I watching? And then about an hour in, you're screaming at everything. You're like, why am I screaming? And then you get out and you're like, why did I have so much fun? What
it's
was
so much
that?
Fun.
And then it's like, I got to go again. And we were going every weekend, traveling all around the cities to every match we could get to. We probably went to, I got to say, at least like 6 in the first month. We were going Saturdays and Fridays. And we got so hooked. And then we started getting to know the wrestlers and the people doing this. And I remember it was a couple fights in. I'm watching, I'm like, I could be a ref. Like, that looks really fun. Like, I was like, I could be a ref. I could do that. And then all of a sudden it's hitting on me. I'm like, all right, I got a couple years till I turn 40, sorry. I was like, I got a couple years left with this body. I'm pretty sure where I could push it a little bit and really go all in. I was like, I'm not getting that time back. 5 years from now, I'm not going to be able to say this again. So I was like, why the hell not? So I reached out to Mr. Anderson, kind of in the middle of the summer, asking him get a little more details. And then he just posted like accepting applicants for the September Academy. And I'm like, okay, I can't just keep saying this. If I'm doing it, I'm doing it now. And so I'm meeting with him.
It's a bug.
I'm meeting with him on Monday. I'm going to go watch the first thing. I'm going to get all signed up. And then come September, we're going to start. We're going to be doing some cool stuff with the podcast where it's going to be kind of a side story with it. And then I got another buddy coming in who is amazing at shooting. He's done like tiny little promos and stuff, but I'm like, what if we did kind of like a documentary as we go throughout this for the year? So we have a lot of footage of like what's it like to get in the industry, especially when you take someone who like didn't grow up knowing the stuff. You're really taking about as fresh as you can get. I'm an open book. I said if I'm going to do this, I'm picking a time where I can go all in. Like I have to learn everything and go as many nights as I can and like take advantage of, again, you're learning from Mr. Kennedy. Like how sick is that?
I honestly, one of my favorites. He does little things. If you ever get a chance, go back and it's his first world title match ever, and it's him and Batista.
Nice.
And he does this little thing that it's almost like this throwaway in the match. But if you're really looking for little things that like that set him apart as far as psychology goes, it happens in the first 30 seconds of it's not even the match. It's the intro to the match. So they're introducing everybody and you've got Batista on one side and you've got Kennedy on the other. The ref is standing in the middle of them and he holds up the world title and Kennedy won't look at Batista. He only looks at the world title. He never takes his eyes off of the world title. And I was like, that is awesome. That's this like obsession that he has with the world title. And I was like, I don't know if anyone else notices this, but like I'm noticing this. And that is, oh my God. Like I know we've talked about that once you start training, I'd love to be able to talk with them and stuff like that. But man, it's one of those where I always just want to say that to him and just be like, hey, that 10 seconds of that one match that you had 10 plus years ago made a difference in my wrestling career. It made a difference in the way I do things.
Oh yeah.
Which I always feel like that's one of those things that like I have conversations with. We had the interview with Coco a few weeks ago, and it was one of those where like I talked about stories that we had 10, 15 years ago, and he's like, man, I don't even remember half the things I did then. He's like, but the fact that it made an impact on you, that's amazing. So it's always stuff like that.
And that's the stuff they want to hear, man.
That's what I'm saying. Like it's what keeps us all from kind of getting fully jaded. We're all like half jaded. We don't need to get fully jaded at this point. But we got a big exciting show that we're viewing on this one. This is SummerSlam 1992. This is a bonus episode for us, and it kind of hits a double edge on us. So one, SummerSlam this year just passed us by, and AEW is about to do All In, which is their big Wembley show. So SummerSlam 1992 was actually one of the first major shows, if not the first major wrestling show in Wembley Stadium. This is, of course, the old Wembley Stadium. They have since rebuilt it. I believe it's bigger, more modern. I believe Tottenham plays there now. It's a huge, like, just, it's obviously the biggest stadium in England. So it's the one that when you talk about America, you talk about, the Madison Square Gardens and things like that. When you talk about England, you talk about Wembley Stadium. If you talk about Japan, you talk about the Tokyo Dome. Everywhere has that one spot that you always kind of relate to that area. And this was huge. I joke around. So this for me and Showtime a lot of times talk about pacing of matches, and this seemed like a little bit of a slower SummerSlam, but that was also the WWE, but it was the WWF's style at the time. But the fans in attendance were fired up, man. Like this was a hot crowd, and I don't care if they fudged the numbers or not. There was still 70,000 something people in that crowd, and man, were they hot. So, I know you said you're not, you watched a little growing up and you're getting back into it. What did you think of what you watched overall, just to get an overall opinion on the show for this one?
See, I loved it. I mean, that's the cool part of, I guess, the era I watched in. I knew far more of the guys than obviously I know when I watch something right now. I mean, I'm getting to know the guys now. And even if I watched something 10 years ago, I still don't know the guys the way I knew this, but it had so many big names in it. And dude, my favorite growing up was the Bushwhackers. Oddly enough.
And they do have the Bushwhackers segment.
The Bushwhackers in it.
Which it's so funny because that they threw the Bushwhackers in that segment to make it seem like, hey, we've got these British guys. They're not British. They're from New Zealand.
Are they actually from New Zealand too? Like
they're
legit?
actually from New Zealand. I didn't
know if that was their shtick. Yeah, I was wondering.
They're actually from New Zealand. And the funny thing is about the Bushwhackers, and I was going to touch on it when we talked about this segment specifically, but the Bushwhackers in the WWE were this lovable, comedic, happy-go-lucky tag team. Before they got to the WWF, they were known as the Sheep Herders. And they were the most violent tag team that you will have ever seen in your life. Like, they were doing hardcore, almost death matches before that was a term. They were it was one of those things and then it's funny because they were doing all this stuff where they made this name for themselves as this this just death, we're gonna kill people, these killers, these violent men. And then they went to the WWE and they're licking faces and making more money than they've ever seen in their entire life to end off their career. Which, it's almost just a beautiful end to that story at this point. Hey, you guys don't have to kill yourself. Here's just a buttload of money for all the years that you spent killing yourself.
That's the stuff they did. And I don't know. I don't remember even watching them as a kid as much as I remember. It was based on having their action figures. I had their action figures, so they're my favorite. And they were super cool. And I remember I was just one of the guys I really like watching here. We had him on our show, Jason Rage. He's really killing it, and he's like the most unique guy in the world. He's so soft spoken, sweet as can be. Right,
I remember listening to the episode you had him on.
Yeah, and he's so nice. But then when he gets in the ring, he's the creator of chaos, and he's nuts, and he's a maniac, and he's kind of a bushwhacker. He'll bite heads and do all this weird stuff, like he bites mohawks. But I was watching one of his. It was a clip he had put out there, and he bites one of the guy's ass, like in the middle of the show, like bites it. I'm like, oh, Jason, don't do that. That's too far. And then I'm watching a bushwhacker match, and
he's doing it.
Both doing it,
and they do it.
Like, oh my gosh! Like, you ripped that off of someone. You didn't even make that original.
You know what's funny though? Yeah, you know what's amazing though is think about it. He's doing it now. This is 1992.
Yeah,
the kids that are watching it now, that's new to them.
Yeah,
it's the beauty of pro wrestling, right? Like you can do something that if you haven't seen it in so long and you recycle it, that's how pro wrestling works. We all steal or tweak or do stuff that everyone's doing. There's no such thing as a completely new move. And when you start doing it all of a sudden, but if you wait long enough and someone hasn't seen something in a long enough time, all of a sudden you get this new crowd that's never seen this version of the move before, and it's like, that's really cool. Meanwhile,
never seen anyone bite an ass like that.
and now you've seen it 3 times because you saw it twice in one.
A lot of ass biting this weekend. That's not even talking about the Bone Thugs concert.
Yeah, right. we won't talk about Miko.
You can't. Oh
man, so the opening, the actual cold open to this show, it's something that gets me because they don't do this in WWE anymore because their cold open is usually like a video package and whatever's leading up to it. I used to love that they did this for WWF shows. Is they would for their big pay-per-views, they would interview people outside of the stadium. And like it would just be random fans, and they'd be like, "Who do you think's going to win in the world title match? Who do you think's going to win in the intercontinental title match? Who's going to do this?" There's this little British kid in there, and every time I watch this, because I've not just watched this to research it, but I'll randomly watch this one leading up to SummerSlam because it's one of the bigger ones. And this little British kid in it, he pops me every time because all you hear is him go, "The British Bulldog is going to win tonight, whether he wants to or not." I'm like, well, why wouldn't he want to win? Like, why wouldn't he want that?
He's an unstoppable force.
Yeah,
he can't even throw a fight.
Yeah, I was like, this. But every time he says it, I've rewatched this particular SummerSlam over the last couple of weeks. I don't know, probably 4 or 5 times now at this point, just because I knew the show was coming up, and I was just like, every time it'd be whether he wants to or not.
That's gold, baby.
Oh man, but like I said, he knew what he was predicting the future.
That's true.
He needs to work in Vegas. He could start his own 1-800 number or something like that. Or
that's right.
I don't even know if those exist anymore. 1-900 numbers.
The new Miss Cleo. Remember Miss Cleo?
I completely remember Miss Cleo, we might be dating ourselves at this point.
Dude, but I just saw like it was like a clickbait thing. It's like, did you know? And it was like Miss Cleo wasn't her real name, and she wasn't even Jamaican. I'm like, well, obviously. She was like, did anyone believe that? She wasn't predicting the future either?
What? You mean the lady with the worst Jamaican accent ever wasn't Jamaican?
Yeah. Like she was somehow scamming the world. I was like, dude, if you called in, she earned that money.
Yeah, right?
That's on you, 100%.
Yeah. Like Sanka Coffee from Cool Runnings had a better Jamaican accent than Miss Cleo did.
You dead, man?
Yeah, man. Oh, man. All right. So we'll get a little bit more into the show now. Opening match. Opening match is Money Inc., Ted DiBiase, the $1 Million Man, and IRS, Irwin R. Shyster. Irwin versus the Legion of Doom. Side note on this match. This was originally supposed to be for the World Tag Team titles. and they took the titles off of Money Inc. because to punish Hawk. Actually, Hawk had gotten suspended for substance abuse, and even in this match, if you look, Hawk is a little woo-hoo, woo-hoo. He had went and partied at some pubs the night before with some unsavory people. And that's why if you kind of watch the end of this match, Animal kind of does all the heavy lifting.
Sure.
But I don't know why I picture you being a Legion of Doom fan. I just automatically
100%.
assume.
Oh yeah.
I just from the time that I've known you, I feel like a mohawk and a reverse mohawk with giant spikes on their shoulder pads just seems like,
dude, it does.
This screams you.
I'll still never forget. I think it was my sophomore year of college at Madison. And Madison was a huge Halloween party, right? People were coming from everywhere. And people went all out for the dress up. I remember I would not leave alone these two guys who dressed as Hawk and Animal and treated them like they were the real Legion of Doom, like meeting celebrities, because their costumes were so awesome. And they were just the
That's
funnest
amazing.
people. They were like the best people to sit and party with out there. I hung out with them all night, best friends with these guys. They were probably just as fun as the other ones. And it was their costume.
The real one. So I want to bring this up. When we went to do the Sting retirement match, when me and Scarps went up there, we went to a local liquor store and we found this beer.
Beautiful.
And it literally has the Legion of Doom on there.
It's sick. Oh my gosh.
And it's funny because especially since it's an IPA, I definitely can't drink it. But I still have it drained and washed and sitting on like my windowsill because I need it forever.
And think of just, I love that's part of the cool part. These guys are such just visual icons at that era. Like you saw it and you were like, I want that. And that's why I said, like, even the toys.
Absolutely.
As someone who wasn't a fan, I had the toys to play with because they were so fun. They were cool. They were superheroes.
That's the thing. I always liken it to comic books.
Yeah.
You and I are both comic book guys. Clearly, I have a ton of action figures in my background, but we obviously, and if you look at these guys, like how much closer to a real life superhero can you get than pro wrestlers? No. Brightly colored tights, flying through the air, beating up bad guys. Or on the other side, if you're a bad guy wrestler, how much more of a supervillain can you be? Like Ted DiBiase was about as close to a Lex Luthor as you're ever gonna get.
Yeah.
Rich guy that was always manipulating stuff. He always had a plan. He always had his stuff. And I have a note on here for this match. Has anyone made more money in anything ever than Ted DiBiase has off of a laugh? Like it's the one thing that everyone knows. They might not know his moves. They might not. They know that he had Virgil, that he was a prick, and that he had that laugh. And this match was better than it probably should have been, given the fact that Hawk was kind of a little, like you said, woohoo. And I feel bad speaking ill of the dead, so I will try to refrain from that one a little bit.
I don't think you're speaking ill.
That's where we're at. Unfortunately, both Road Warriors have passed away in recent years. Hawk first, and then in the last couple of years, we did lose Animal. But we still get a little bit because Animal's son actually played in the NFL for a little bit, so that was cool to see. And then we also have the ties to this match because IRS is current superstar, and unfortunately a superstar that passed away, his father, and he's Bray Wyatt's father and Bo Dallas's father as well. IRS, Mike Rotundo, one of the greatest amateur wrestlers to ever come through WWF or NWA, and he kind of puts it on display in this match a little bit because you can tell like he has to like actually use his real amateur wrestling to kind of hold Hawk down sometimes. I was like, that's kind of cool. Like, this is how you're covering stuff up.
Yeah.
I love how athletic they show Animal being in this match, though. And like I said, the fans had no idea that this was not what this match wasn't what it was supposed to be. So at the end of the day, that's kind of the story of this, right? Like no one knew any difference between what was happening or what wasn't supposed to happen, and they all cheered their heads off. I love the Legion of Doom coming down on the motorcycles. That was amazing. That was sick.
Yeah.
Oh man, I love the Road Warriors, man. I love the Legion of Doom. They're always going to have a special place in my heart, and I always love how you were just talking about the Mohawks. If you ever listen to their interviews, it's Hawk that came up with the haircut idea, and he looked at Animal and he goes, "Why don't you shave your head into a mohawk, and I'll shave my head into a reverse mohawk."
Yeah,
and it looks like we plug in together.
Yeah.
But they're originally, I believe, Minnesota boys too.
Oh gosh, it's crazy finding out how many people came from around here, and what a big wrestling network we had up here.
Oh, Minnesota's a hotbed, man. And so they got in. It was them. It was Rick Rude. Basically, all the biggest name wrestlers at one point. They all kind of worked as bouncers at this bar together, and they would all apparently have contests on, like, when they would throw people out, on how far they could throw them.
Yeah,
because they were all massive. Oh man. But like I said, overall, I went in kind of knowing about this match, so I tried not to take it as seriously as I had to. I just wanted to have fun watching it. And you get if nothing else, the Legion of Doom theme music, that what a rush, and then the guitar rip. It's so cool, man. Like, I love. This is kind of why I like talking to guys like you, man. I like being able to be a non-jaded fan again.
Yeah.
Hold on. Yep, I got you. The next segment we get is Mean Gene Okerlund, who, in my opinion, is the greatest backstage interviewer in the history of Everdom. And he is interviewing Ric Flair to foreshadow the upcoming main event. And this is one of the better Ric Flair interviews. And this is also, I'm sure this is one of the few times in his career, I think, that Flair was probably on the gas at this point, because he looks shredded for Flair. Flair was never the most shredded guy, but he looks pretty beefy on even in this interview. But he cuts such a good promo on this, and he talks about they're talking about whose corner Mr. Perfect's going to be in, and he goes, well, he's going to be in the winner's corner, obviously. And I love it. I love that he does that. They immediately go from that into an interview with Sean Mooney and Virgil. And I think Virgil might have been on Molly or something at this point, because he is the sweatiest man on the planet.
Oh, geez. I don't need to be on Molly for that. I usually give people a run for the money.
Yeah, but he is, and even like the lines he gives, like he throws like a punch at Mooney, and you just hear him go, "You gotta want it, man." And I'm like, oh Jesus, we're just culturally appropriating all of this, aren't we? Like, you are officially, like, he's Token from fucking South Park at this point. Everything he does is like a complete 1992 stereotype of what, like, a black dude should be doing. Like, he's everything that MC Hammer is trying to be at that point. Which, it's funny because this is the end of when MC Hammer was doing anything, and this was also kind of the end of any type of Virgil push at the time. He just kind of he was relegated to super mid card, which it's a little upsetting because a year before this at SummerSlam 91, he has what I always like to say it's one of my favorite matches of all time. It's the most like classic babyface heel match you'll ever see. Which, by the way, if you get a chance on Peacock, Brock, I know you're looking at different research stuff for your stuff.
Yeah.
SummerSlam 1991 is my favorite is my favorite event of all time. Up and down, it is the most perfect event. But SummerSlam a year later, we get Virgil versus Nails in what is a bit of a throwaway match. This is, I think, the Big Boss Man might actually have gotten hurt, so they didn't really have this match. So they threw Virgil in there, and Nails just beats on him, which it's. I think this was. I think they might have caught some backlash on this one because it was this white convict beating up the bald black guy, and it was just a little off on this one. Nail, I forget if they call it a no contest or what they do, but Nails just, honestly, he just dog walks him the whole match. And again, it's one of those where I think the fans are into it just because the fans are still high at this point on the show. It's very early. And then we get one of my favorites, an interview with the sensational Sherry. I love Sherry Martel. She is one of those ones who, if you go back and you look at her work, it is 20 years too early and it is underrated at best. And that's from people who still love her. Like, we're still like, oh my God, she was so amazing. And she starts going over and really, really showcasing what the background and lead up to this Intercontinental title match is going to be, plus the special stipulation, because it is Shawn Michaels, the Heartbreak Kid, and the model Rick Martel. And because they're both beautiful men with lovely features, especially to, as Sherry says, the softer sex. They are not allowed to punch each other in the face. Overall, we get into this match. Brock, I'm kind of glazing over some of the lighter stuff here, but this was supposed to be a big match. How into this match did you get? The IC title match, just because this
might have been
this
one.
I'm sorry, this wasn't the IC title match. This was the IC title match was Bulldog Bret Hart. Yeah. I mean, I'm sorry, the Martel Michaels. This was. I try to get into this match all the time because I'm a fan of both of these guys, and this was early on in Michaels being by himself still, so it's a little weird. But Rick Martel, I'm always a big fan of his stuff.
So unfortunately, some of the clips were just glanced through. I think this was more of a highlight one I saw as they were doing just kind of a rush through all of them. The bigger ones, again, like I saw, the Macho Man and Warrior.
And
that was the one I saw the whole thing.
And Warrior.
And the Bret Hart. And then, of course, the Bushwhackers. I got to see that because it was the Bushwhackers. And the rest were kind of skimming through. So this one, unfortunately, I didn't get to go too in-depth with.
So this was... You can tell this was definitely kind of a Vince. I mean, they were all Vince setup matches, but like some of the stuff in this, you can tell this is like Vince McMahon style humor. So Sherry comes out and she's got like assless chaps on, and like this was the first time there had ever been like a thong seen on pro wrestling television, basically. And this is 1992, and I remember being 10 years old and going, oh. You can't. I was like, I don't know if I'm supposed to be watching this. And meanwhile, I'm sitting there watching with my dad, and he's like, yeah, okay.
Hey, but this was this boy.
Yeah, the match was overall okay. It was good. I have some issues with it in general. Here's where kind of the disconnect comes for me. They're both heels. They're both bad guys. But they're both wrestling this match basically as good guys. Because you can't punch each other in the face. And not hitting someone in the face is a very good guy thing to do, realistically. And even they do it. And then you've got the end of it with Sherry fainting, and they get the double count out, and all this other stupid, weird stuff going on, and it just gets too convoluted with it. If these two guys had just gone out there and had a match, this match would have been amazing. If there was no special stipulation, if there was nothing going on, Shawn Michaels and Rick Martel would have put on this amazing, amazing match. And we kind of missed out on that just because I think Martel was just a. I think he kind of would only stick around to get other guys over after this. And I think it was only like, this is 92, by like 94, 95, Martel had kind of semi-retired from pro wrestling. Until he came back in like 96, I think. And he went to WCW and he started putting on really great matches again. But I think he kind of like semi-retired and like was focusing on health stuff. Immediately after that, we get a Nasty Boys segment, which it was weird because the Nasty Boys were heels and they were making fun of Sensational Sherry, who was also a heel. And this was kind of, I guess, the start of them trying to turn them face, and they're demanding a title shot, but Money Inc. is also supposed to get the title shot, and Jimmy Hart is the manager of both of them, and he guarantees them this tag team title shot, which it's, again, some of this stuff, it's very weird. It's very, very early 90s WWF, kind of how they flow through. I do like, and you can definitely see the difference, like the production value and things like that. And like there's not nearly as many video packages, and the video packages you do get are not nearly what people put on today, especially not the WWE. But this was, I still just remember how big this show was. And even every time they did something, even this Nasty Boy segment, which isn't the best segment, it just still felt so big. And I like that they did a lot of segments in like actual like locker rooms, which always seemed cool to me. Like it wasn't just, some random like setup or some place backstage. Like, no, this was in a locker room. You're a wrestler. You're an athlete. Like, you have a locker room. And that always made sense to me. We follow this, we get the tag team title match with the Natural Disasters versus the Beverly Brothers, accompanied by the Genius, otherwise known as Leaping Lanny Poffo, otherwise known as Macho Man Randy Savage's brother. It's funny because the Natural Disasters were baby faces in this match. They're usually, up until this point, they had been bad guys. It's also weird that the Natural Disasters were always almost always wrestled as heels, because in real life, they are, every story you ever hear about them, they are the nicest, most gentle men on the planet. Vice had done they do the Dark Side of the Ring stuff, and they had done one on Earthquake John Tenta. And they said it's a dark side, not because John lived this dark life, but because of his weight, and I believe it was a heart condition and things like that. He basically just died too early. And that's the dark side of it, is that this amazing human being left us way too early. But it, like, there's so many pictures of this giant man, John Tenta, 400 pounds or whatever he is, former sumo wrestler. And he's laying on the couch and he's playing Game Boy with his kid. And like, he's like, that's what he loved to do. He's like, he would go on the road and wrestle, and he would get off the road as quickly as possible and come home. He never went and partied, never did anything like that. He wrestled and he hung out with his family, and that's all he wanted to do in the world. And I respect that. I respect guys that make that type of sacrifice, that they still provide for their families, but they are still family men. The Beverly Brothers had a lot of really cool double team moves in this match, and I love it. I love tag team wrestling. I miss tag team wrestling. I want to see real tag team wrestling. Me and Mr. Brock are going to actually tag up and have tag team wrestling. Yes. And then we're probably going to go after Jason Rage, and he's going to bite my ass, or my lack thereof.
I'm going to turn on you that match.
Oh, man.
We're each grabbing a cheek.
Oh man, I mean, I don't have much ass, so you're gonna starve, dude.
We'll find it. We'll find it.
Oh man, and then we get Brock's favorite segment, the Bushwhackers.
Oh baby, those guys, I just can't
They
get
get
over
their
everything
you know what,
about
man,
that.
this was everything about the Bushwhackers, the arm thing,
Yes,
the
just
the camo cargo pants.
yes, the look, the everything. They were so
Just
they were entertainment.
Everything they do is so good. It's so funny, and it's funny because I still love it. Like I can go back and watch it now. Like,
Yeah.
oh my god, they were still so good. It was still so great. And and like you said, they were like the first action figure you got, and like I wouldn't be surprised just knowing you that you still have those figures somewhere.
I was not kidding. If I had more time, I got back here we got a hotel room last night. We were up till 3 a.m. We overslept, got up at 7 and ran out. Like, luckily I told everyone we had to leave at 6. So like 7 was still really early, but like we had to get two and a half hours back to my car, 40 minutes back from there. And we ran in and it was like 10:30 when I got in. And he texted me, if I had another hour, I would have stopped at my parents' because I'm fairly confident I know where they are. I have a little bin. It was just these tiny little wrestling action figures.
Yeah,
It's
the
like
old, the Hasbro or the LJN ones or whatever they were. Like, yeah,
dude, they were even smaller. They were like this big, and they were for like a game you put them on or something. I don't know. You could actually wrestle with them. But I totally, I know for a fact, next time I'm on, I'm going to have all of those set up, and I'm going to show you. I want to bring them out here, so I have them set up in my door corner now.
I love that you got your coal mine studio now, man.
This is a big thing that we're starting. Yeah, you haven't even seen. I mean, you can go around here. This is that's our first wrestling poster for the first show we got to do. Got it signed by everyone. But then I got my, these are some of my favorite comics, if you really want to get into them. There's the Infinity Snap, the first one.
Oh, nice.
It's one of the best series. This is Secret Wars, which is another amazing series. And then let's see, that's the first appearance of the Prowler from Spider-Man, and that's the first Guardians of the Galaxy comic. So it's not Yanu's first appearance. There's some of my faves.
I just got a brand new comic book box, so it looks kind of fancy. But I still want to go get all my stuff graded because I've got these comics that are in this box have, aside from when I initially bought them, like I bought them and put them in plastic immediately. They've never seen the light of air otherwise. They were all ones that I bought like doubles of. Like I'm like, oh, I'm going to read this one, but this one goes in here.
See, my stick was coming more late in the game where I didn't have a chance of getting them any when they came out. So my collector idea was more, I went for like mid to higher mid grades instead of going for all the mints. Because my theory is like in 50 years, if you keep them in good case now, like if they stay at the same condition, that's still pretty good to have it, right?
That's what I'm saying. Like and a lot of times it'll be in 40 or 50 years. That's when people are looking for those comics and they're gonna be like,
yeah,
we can't find them anywhere. And you'll have
it's a lost medium now. I mean, that's crazy. The printed anything is just a lost medium. Exactly. So that's why I think they're so cool to have. You got a piece of history you'll never see again.
I was going to say, unless I'm going to actively buy like a comic book to collect, I only do it on digital at this point because I don't collect nearly like I used to. Oh, man. All right. Let's see what we got after Bushwhackers, because Bushwhackers was fun. I again, a lot of this it's Bushwhackers humor, but it's also Vince humor. The stuff with after we eat our royal dinner, we're going to sit on the royal throne. We get Crush versus the Repo Man. So this match is interesting to me for a lot of different reasons. For one thing, this is very early Crush as a kind of bigger talent. This is young mullet Crush. But Crush and Repo Man, this is the battle of former tag team partners, and no one kind of realized it at the time. Or, I mean, people realized it, but a young boy of 10 could not have realized this. Is that Crush, who was a former member of the Tag Team Demolition, was battling the Repo Man, who was Smash from Demolition. So they were literally tag team partners the year before this or whatever it was, and now they're wrestling each other. And they're both big dudes. And I used to like the one thing the Repo Man did was he's a legit, I think, like 6'5" or something like that. He's a big dude. And because he was supposed to be this like snarky, swarmy heel that like went around stealing stuff, he would crouch down real low and make him, and like always would be like hunched over and making himself try to look smaller. Like it was a very Wolverine thing. Like he was like, realistically, he's like 6'5", but he would like hunch himself down and you'd really believe he was like 5'10". But it was always one of those cool things that he did. The match all around was fun. It was, again, this is kind of like the Virgil and Nails match. It's a little bit of a throwaway, but it's cool to see these two guys, and especially knowing Barry Darsow, the Repo Man, Smash, whatever name you know him as. He had a really long career. He's got a lot of accolades. He's got, with Demolition, he has a couple tag team titles. And Crush, Bryan Adams, not Canadian Bryan Adams. Canada has apologized enough for Bryan Adams. Bryan Adams' Crush he goes on, this is 92. He's still he becomes the WCW Tag Team Champions with Brian Clark in 2000, I think. So he's still wrestling, and he's in like 8 years later, he's in this phenomenal, like he's shredded out and stuff. And he's even back with WWE when they when they buy WCW, they bring him back in because they were still, him and Clark were still the tag team champions at this point. So it was very, very interesting to see this young version of him, all baby faced, and he even, if you look, he even almost looks like he still has baby fat on him. Like he's a big dude, but you can tell he hasn't trimmed up like he's going to at some point. After this, we get a video package for the lead up to the world title match. This is cool. It's you can tell this is early video package type stuff. But you get to see a lot of this whole Macho Man, Ultimate Warrior not trusting each other because Ultimate Warrior ended Macho Man's career at WrestleMania 7, and they've never liked each other. And behind the scenes, no one really liked Warrior, but that is what it is. And they do the whole thing with Mr. Perfect is going to be in one of their corners. I feel like even when I was a kid, I kind of knew like neither one of them was going to sell out, and that this was going to end up being a double cross just in overall. But it was still interesting. This was one of the matches you said you fully saw, though. This was one of the ones that you really dove into.
Yep.
Here, I'm going to throw this out before I throw it to you. Before I throw your opinion to this. This is the weirdest Ultimate Warrior gear ever. Not the jacket. I always dug the sleeveless trench coat that he wore. But the fact that he, like, for some reason during this time period, Warrior, like, switched over to this singlet that had painted on muscles, which was always weird to me because he had actual muscles. So it never made sense to me that he was wearing this singlet. Like I never he literally wore this completely like airbrushed skin colored singlet that had like muscles painted on and his Ultimate Warrior symbol painted on the chest. And I was like, why don't you just wear your normal tights, man? Like I never understood it. And it's 30 years later. I still don't understand it, but I don't know. It was just it was a weird time to be a Warrior fan, I guess, at that point. But I'm gonna throw this one to you. I feel like this is one of those matches that, as a kid, I loved, but like I could see that like these are the guys that you really know, and this is one of the bigger matches on the card, obviously for the world title. So, Mr. Brock, I am giving you the floor for this match. So what
Yeah.
did you think of this one?
I mean, this is one again. So you still kind of had the image somewhat when you're watching as a kid. That this is truly like you don't know who's going to win. They're actually competing like in any other sport. Like who has the best moves? You know, how are you going to throw that in there, right? And to an extent, that's there's part of that to it, as it's real. But you know, it's still, you know, they don't know who's going to win at the end. But to see the performance as an adult, what they were doing throughout the whole thing, right? Like you said, the whole like we don't trust Ric Flair. Who's going to turn on who? That was where it just became kind of just a mind fuck at that point, pardon my French, where it's just like, what are these guys doing? And like, again, you're sitting here like, I'm so into this. Like, I need to know like the psychology. Like, that's just it. Like, it went from beyond just watching two warriors who are just so talented in the ring with their art, beating the crap out of each other with sick moves, to I just loved the psychology behind this one. It was a whole different match to me watching it as an adult and trying to follow that. And like you said, just like learning like these subtleties to the art of what they're doing and just the little things that you're doing that you're watching now, rather than like who's going to do the biggest jump off the rope, right?
Exactly.
That's part of what you're watching. You love it, and they're still doing that, but it's still like, okay, who's really drawn me in at this point? Where I'm like, at the end, when it gets to the end, I'm like, that was brilliant. Like the way you just put me through this like emotional roller coaster throughout this whole thing. That was more than just the fight. That was more than just what you see as a kid and what you're looking. I feel like even as you grow in the industry as a fan who's looking at more of everything going on rather than just like the cars blowing up, right? Because that's like what the casual fan wants to see. I want to see blood. I want to see cool stuff flipping through the air, right? Because you just want to. But when you're really starting to get into it and you see a fight like this, it's like I didn't even pay attention to half the moves they're doing, right? It was so much less about that. That was the coolest part. And that's what, again, I'm loving so much about the industry.
And even Vince and Bobby as commentators, they do such a good job of like kind of pulling you in a little bit. And I'm a big believer in this. So me and Showtime, we differ in this a little bit. So Showtime will always bring up how much he enjoys matches more than anything else. Like he wants like 60% wrestling and like 40% story.
Sure.
I differentiate a little bit. I kind of want this. I feel like you can do either one can be a little bit more, but I feel like it should be a little even. It's like I'm usually like 55-45, and it doesn't matter which one is the 55-45. I just think that you need to be able to. And this was a point, this and WCW at this time, or like the NWA in the 1980s. I always joke around that in order to be a sports-based wrestling promotion, you don't just have to show matches. That's not what it is. You have to have these matches. You still have to have these storylines that are building up, because why do I care that two men are getting into this fight for no reason? You know, if there's no reason involved with it, why am I watching it? But then you get this action-packed match, and it's the end of the end all be all still has to be that they don't insult anyone's intelligence type of thing. Like, don't dumb this down. Like, I get it. It's supposed to be a product for kids, and it is a product for kids a lot of times. I know you and I joke around because we're both Star Wars fans.
Mm-hmm.
And I always liken pro wrestling to Star Wars a lot of times, because there's a lot of adult wrestling fans are very, very jaded about the wrestling product. And there's a lot of adult Star Wars fans that are very jaded about the Star Wars product.
Yeah.
The problem with the adults that are jaded by this product is the product isn't always made for them.
Yeah.
Star Wars was made for kids.
Yeah.
So the fact that a 35-year-old adult man doesn't like the new Star Wars that came out, you're not really supposed to. In what was the year the first one came out? 77, 78?
I think it's 70. Yeah, I think it's 77.
Yeah, so in 77, Star Wars was geared specifically towards like 10-year-olds. 10-year-old boys who wanted to explore space and hold a laser sword. there's a reason why it's not geared towards the 45-year-old man that's, just happened to have watched it when it first came out. And wrestling, I think, falls into that category sometimes, where some of this stuff gets geared towards kids, especially old WWF stuff. But this is one of those, like you said, even now, if the story is right, it'll still pull you in. And I really, really love that you, as the still a little bit more of a casual fan and just getting into the business yourself, can find joy in this match. Because unfortunately, I've been doing this for so long that I get stuck watching this match and I'm like, Warrior's tired. This happened. He shouldn't have ran to the ring because he's blown up already. Like, it's just going through my head and I'm like, all right, stop this. The match isn't as bad as it could be. And not to mention, Macho Man Randy Savage has been on document as being like OCD about his matches. So matches don't get screwed up. So so this match could have been so much, like, it could have gone off the rails so easily. And between Flair and Perfect and Macho, I think they all are able to kind of rein in Warrior a bit on certain things. And like you said, you got this emotional roller coaster with it. And I love that you love this match so much, because that if you love this match, I say this all the time, if you, who are for the most part the casual fan that they are gearing stuff towards, that means anything that I say about the match, it's moot, because you loved it. And I love getting that perspective on things a lot of times.
So that's the cool thing. I think you touched on it too, with the difference between, like, we can all get jaded and have our opinions on it, but like with Star Wars, I'm not a huge fan of the new stuff. Like you said, it's not for me. I mean, the audience is different. People are loving it, but at the end of the day, it's like, it's still Star Wars, so I love Star Wars.
It's still
like,
Star Wars.
I'm still gonna appreciate it, right? There's series that came out, I watched. I'm like, that wasn't very good. It was disappointing, but I was like, but it's still Star Wars, so I watched it. And I'm not gonna sit here with this massive critique, like, oh, I hate when people are just tearing everything apart. It does. I'm like, dude, you can't rip on it. It's still Star Wars. That's like wrestling. Like, I loved listening to your guys' opinions on stuff, because it's like, but at the heart, it's still wrestling. I love it.
It's still wrestling,
right?
It's still wrestling. Yeah,
that's one of my favorite scriptures of all time. Is not to get religious on this, is Philippians 1:18, and it's Paul talking about in jail when false preachers are out talking, and he goes, "But I rejoice because they're still saying the name of Jesus." Right? And that's for me, for wrestling, and for like Star Wars. It's like, but I rejoice because it's still Star Wars. Like, I don't care.
That's what I'm saying. Starting this show, do you understand the amount of, like, we say it all the time, the scope, the amount of wrestling that I have? I already watched a huge amount of wrestling, and the amount of wrestling that I now watch, it's almost absurd to think about. And I'm like, I watch wrestling that I would not have normally watched, and I'm kind of happy about it, because all of a sudden I get this, I get to see some of this wrestling that, like I said, I would not normally have watched. And like, now it's like, oh, I wouldn't have gotten to see this match, or I wouldn't have gotten to see this segment if I wasn't doing this show, and I wasn't kind of part of my job now at this point. And
what a good job.
Like you said, I rejoice. I rejoice. I rejoice in having this life. I love doing the show. I love that I get that, because of this show, I got to meet you guys, and I get to go on your show. You know, everything about this, man. This is, we always say how appreciative we are to the fans, and we are. Like, Legion of Lariat, if you're listening right now, and I know we're getting a little bit on a tangent, dudes, fans, Legion, we love you. Coal Mine, fans of that, we love you guys too. Like, I'm so happy to be able to say I'm part of both shows.
Same, and same. We love every time we go to an event, we have a little. You've seen it. We have a little thing sitting on our table, directing people to your show. The little QR code for you guys. And our joke is like, it's like, you want to listen to a real wrestling podcast, listen to these guys. Because when you first told me about your show and I first stumbled upon it, I was a different fan back then, so I kind of skimmed through some of it, but I liked your guys' dynamic and your chemistry, and it just came through like you guys have been friends forever. That's what people want to hear on a podcast. right? They want to hear the chemistry, but for friends. But I remember my first thought is like, how the hell are you guys doing almost 2-hour shows? And what are you talking about? Because I'm like, how do you talk that much about wrestling? Right? Like, I'm like, there's not that much to talk about. Right? And quick,
and we used to have to cut ourselves, and we used to have to cut ourselves off.
But I remember when I started listening,
that was like, the craziest thing.
I'm learning so much. Like, I couldn't believe the depths you go into in each thing. And I was like, I can see as like a wrestling fan really being intrigued by your guys' take, because it's not super. I mean, there's opinions, but it's analytics before anything. It's analyzing. It's not saying this is good, this is bad, you shouldn't like this. It's saying, well, I didn't love this, but I get why they did it. And like, and you say, but I appreciate it. Doesn't matter what I think. Look at how many fans loved it. I didn't need to love that. That wasn't for me.
That's always my thing. Is I'm the guy who was involved in the business the longest out of anyone that comes on our show, and that's why it's nice to have guys like you. When I have Scarps on there, at the end of the day, if the fans like what is being put out there, it doesn't matter what I like. The fans liked it. The people who are filling the every 18 inches liked it, and that's what really matters. Like, because at the end of the day, it's about making money, right? It's about selling tickets. It's about making people happy, and they do it. We've gotten off on a little bit of a tangent, so I'm going to pull us back a little bit and get back to SummerSlam 92 real quick.
However, before
that is my job.
I know you're not going to say it, but we got to give you a shout out. You just shared this with me at the beginning, but something huge about your show that I want to congratulate for is you just got the notice. You hit 1,000 viewers this week, which is freaking huge. For
a thousand listens. That's
1,000 listens, but that's huge for a podcast that just started like yours. Because how many episodes are you?
We are 27, not counting the bonus. So
that's
27 weekly episodes.
And how fast you guys have grown, and how many countries you're in now. We got to send you a huge congrats, and that goes to saying that you guys are putting on a good thing, and you're giving people what they want. You got a lot of people listening because they love it.
And to throw you your flowers as well. Let's not forget Coal Mine 50th episode, bro.
Baby, yeah.
Episode number 50.
We got a huge
one.
Huge one dropping. Stay tuned when the 50th comes out. It's live from the Bone Thugs concert. We only get Miko for about 10 minutes total because he's running around, but we got so many people coming in. You'll hear a happy Miko every 15 minutes when he comes back and forth.
It's Miko in all of his glory.
That's beautiful.
I can't wait to get Miko on this show when we review old. Yeah, I can't wait to get Miko on here when we review old Memphis wrestling.
Yes, dude, you gotta have you for sure do.
So now that was our little intermission, and now we're back on to SummerSlam 92. We get Kamala versus The Undertaker. This is kind of the end of this was kind of the last big push Kamala ever really got. He would just keep getting brought in as kind of an attraction at this point. And this was the beginning of Undertaker being like Undertaker. Like he was as soon as he came in, he was huge. And then over the first year, like that end of 90 through like end of 91, he made this huge transition where everyone realized like, oh, he's this big scary Undertaker character, but he's so good at his character that the fans started turning and he became a fan favorite.
Oh, yeah.
And he didn't do anything differently than what he had been doing the whole time. He was still being the Undertaker the whole time. And the fans just loved it so much that they couldn't get enough of it.
What a name
very
for
much
wrestling. Undertaker.
The Undertaker.
Name. Just beautiful.
And you got a 6'8" monster.
Yeah. Oh gosh.
And he's
just beautiful.
So Undertaker and Kamala, this is very much kind of par for the course for Undertaker during this time. There was a lot of years where Undertaker wouldn't get put into world title situations because he was just constantly, as he put it, slaying dragons. He was the dark, not to quote, he was the Batman. He was the Dark Knight that would go in and have to go beat every single monster heel that they had in some way, shape, or form. And it was just constantly him fighting 400 pounders or like, 8 foot tall guys or whatever it was, Giant Gonzalez. And I remember the point that he always talks about is it comes in a little after this. He gets his favorite time in the wrestling business, and that's when he gets to do his program with Yokozuna, which they are amazing friends. And Yokozuna, for being as big as he was, could actually move around and do really cool athletic stuff, which was also Undertaker's MO. You're not supposed to be 315 pounds and walk across the top rope. That doesn't happen normally. And yet Undertaker was doing that nightly. So this match was one of those where it was I don't want to say it was a throwaway because it was still an Undertaker match, but this is the match that they threw in there. This is match placement is always funny to me because especially WWF looks at it this way. If you ever look, the reason why they throw in like a slow match in between like the world title match and then this Bret Hart British Bulldog match, it's to bring the fans down so that they can pull them back up again. Because like if you like you talked about an emotional roller coaster, if you're on a real roller coaster, you don't just go up the whole time and you don't just go down the whole time. You have to have that, and then the loop and then the twist and stuff like that. It's one of those where the order of the show is still just as important to the show as the matches themselves. So like when you had this, they actually did this so that they did bring the fans back down a little bit, so that when Hart and Bulldog came out, which we're going to get into now, the ovation these two guys got, again, 70, 80,000 people, whatever the real number is, it's still a lot more people than I've ever wrestled in front of or performed in front of, and by 800-fold at this point. They put on, and I know you said you watched the Bulldog match. This is this goes down in history as one of the greatest IC title matches ever, and I'd love to get your opinion on this one, just because I want to see where you're living in this world. And again, this is a match that I still feel holds up, so I'd love to see where your head's at with the Bulldog and Bret Hart.
So this was a cool one, just because Bret Hart has such a near and dear place in my heart. Only because of just kind of a side story. I think I've shared this with you. I had a buddy who was getting married who's a big wrestling fan, and he asked me to do a speech at his wedding. And I really didn't have much of a desire. Obviously, I would. I love the guy to death. But I was like, I got to do something funny for him. And so I thought, like, Bret Hart's on Cameo. I wonder if I could get him to do a quick speech for me. And so I wrote, hey, this is a buddy's wedding. He's getting married. Could you give a little toast for him and his bride? And sure enough, a day later, I get the Cameo back, and it was beautiful. He did such a nice one for him, like talking about how they're going to be a greater tag team match than him and what's his name, the Hammer.
Jim and Jim the Anvil Neidhart.
Danville,
yeah, Jim Neidhart.
Better than they ever were, and just this beautiful, and it was so touching. It was beautiful, and I got to give that to my buddy as a gift, and like his whole family was like, "That was so cool! What a cool thing to do!" And I was just touched by how personal it was. So it's like. And everything the Hart Foundation, all that's done. You just like Bret Hart, right? You just like you like the family, and there's such just a family in wrestling, right? Like everything they've been through with Owen and all that stuff, you just love them. So they're so cool to then going back watch this, and this is just at the height of his excellence, right? Where he's just incredible, and then knowing that these two are family too. And I even watched a cool interview after, which watching the match, I have to watch it again just to get more appreciation for everything Bret said about it, with the Bulldog just bringing it. Like you said, I didn't know anything about the injury, really. I know that at that time there was a little more with, I think Bulldog was probably injury later, struggling with some substance stuff outside the ring, right? He was struggling a little bit with that. Yeah. But Bret was like, despite what people think, he was 100% on in this match. And like he was 100% giving it. Like he was giving everything to it, and he was hurt, but like everything he was doing was like 110. And he talks about, he's like, this is one of my favorite matches ever. Like just, this is an older Hart going back and talking about it. And I felt like that one what I loved was like just pure wrestling to an extent where it was just so it was just classic wrestling.
It's
It was just
wrestling. They did what the marquee says.
it was artistic. I mean, and it was just pure wrestling. Form was perfect. Every move they were doing was perfect, right? It was a little less of the psychology and the story, and it was just totally tribute to the art of what they were doing. And each one of them was just bringing it. And it goes all the way to the end, which again, hearing more about that finishing move that Bulldog pulls at the end. And I didn't know Bret Hart was actually saving that in his pocket for the perfect match. Like he was waiting to bring that up because
I was gonna say I watched those videos too. That's really cool.
He brought it up to someone else to bring it, and they're like, "No, that's lame. I don't want to do that move." Like they were like, "That's," and he's like, "Dude, it's the perfect finisher." He's like, "No one sees it coming, and I can't get out of it."
Yeah.
He's like, "It's just beautiful. It's just this bam, quick, boom. He's down, done." And everyone's like, "What the hell happened?" Like, and it was just yes, like he finished it. Like it was beautiful.
And sure enough, it is. And if you think about it, it's a wrestling move.
Yeah,
he ended it with a wrestling move. It was a pin. He rolled him up.
He couldn't have tapped out if he wanted to.
It's a pure pin.
Out. Yeah, pure pin. Yeah. That's why I'm saying it was so pure. It was like that was a win, a perfect win.
And the match is clean. So there's always a spot. The one spot that always stands out in my mind in this match. And Bret Hart has brought it up. That's why it always stands out in my mind. Is there's the move where Bret dives over the top rope. Mm-hmm. And if you look, you can see it's one of the only times that Bulldog is a little out of place on things. Mm-hmm. And he doesn't get there quite quick enough. And Bret overshoots him. But if you look, the way he ends up doing it, he kind of grabs the Bulldog by his neck to save himself. And when he's going down, it looks so much more devastating than if he had just landed on top of him, because it literally looks like he did like a springboard neck breaker type move. And it was literally just him trying to save his life at this point.
Yeah.
Like it was like, you can see he grabs just enough of him where he's like, I'm just bracing myself. You were supposed to catch me. But if you look at he wraps him around like his shoulders and just drags him down with him to slow his fall. But he says it himself. He goes, listen, it looked pretty cool, but I was just trying to save my life. I saw how it was going, and I think he had actually dove enough where if he hadn't have done it, I think he was going to actually hit the guardrail or something like that. And he was like, yeah, I was going to end bad. It was going to end bad for me. And we still had 15 more minutes of match to go.
Yeah, I see. I said, after hearing them talk about it, I want to go back and watch everything again to see what they're saying. Especially that.
I absolutely love this match, and this is one of those matches that makes me. I love this stigma for the Intercontinental title where it's the workhorse title. You've gotten guys that a lot of times the best wrestler in WWF or WWE has been the Intercontinental Champion. You got the Macho Mans, the Ricky Steamboats, the Mr. Perfects, the Bret Harts, the Shawn Michaels. We talk about guys that this has been a stepping stone to the world title, but a lot of times these guys are also the best in they might not be the best promo, or they might not be the story they tell is completely in the ring. So in between the ropes, where it matters, where the marquee says wrestling, these guys wrestle. Like you said, this was a wrestling match. And this was Bulldog. This was the biggest he had ever been. He was just massive at this point. He was just a huge powerhouse. And I love that he starts off this match and he does a lot of his old wrestling stuff. He does a lot of very European style wrestling in this with he's got the arm bar and he hits the mat and he does the spin around and hooks the arm with his ankle and stuff like that. That's all very, very European and English style wrestling. And I love that he still does it as big as he is, because he was 270 at this point or something like that. And he's not a tall man. He's 5'11", and he was 270 or something like that. He's just a massive, just powerhouse. Although I think like 15 pounds of it was the braids.
Yeah, that was it. When you talked about this, I'm like, shoot, I forgot to talk about the braids. That was part of it. I love the hair. I did. I'm like, hey, he pulled it off. I don't know. I've always wanted cornrows, so I think there might be a point in my career where I feel like I can just do that now because of that.
Just let it keep going and
let it keep going and
listen,
do it one time.
If you show up on here with British Bulldog hair one day, I'm
yeah.
like that's gonna be the thumbnail for the show forever. Like I might replace the penguin with you as
Dude,
with you throwing with you throwing a clothesline with British Bulldog hair.
Dude,
a Lariat.
I've got good hair. I should grow it out one more time for the wrestling big. I've thought about it. Again, I was not kidding. I was about to wear cornrows to my senior prom, but my mom wouldn't let me. She's like, absolutely not. She's like, Brock, we're not looking at those photos when you're an adult. Like, I don't want to see that. But my girlfriend at the time was totally in. She was like, do it. That'd be hilarious. It's like, wouldn't it be funny if this guy showed up to, because I had long hair. I mean, it was down to my shoulders. If I showed up to prom in cornrows.
You were lucky. I cannot grow it long, man. It once it starts touching my neck, I get a little antsy.
Yeah, whatever. Well, that's a bucket.
Oh man,
now I want to do it just for you.
Yeah, now you got to, man. But all around, I love the show of this. Again, I am fully admitted to the fact that SummerSlam is my favorite pay-per-view of all the pay-per-views. And this is a huge one. I thought overall it's a little it gets a little slow at times, but for the most part, it's still just a really, really good show. And I love the fact that I love the amount of people. I love the fact that the fans loved it. Again, you're one of those people that I love the fact that even some of the stuff that I wasn't totally into, you were absolutely into. So
yeah.
That just proves that they did that. This show that is 32 years old now. I just want to point that out. There are people who are listening to this show right now are not as old as this show. And it still does what it's supposed to do, which is amazing. That's one of those things that I love about wrestling is there's so many things about wrestling now that like you said, it's all wrestling. So I say this on the show all the time. There's so many ways that you can find wrestling now that I didn't used to have as a kid. Like, tape trading was a real thing, and you used to have to hunt down stuff like Japanese stuff and things like that, and it was so hard to find. And now it's YouTube. I can go on YouTube and find it. I can go on Peacock and find a bunch of the old territory stuff. I can go on. If I want to really, really just spend my money, you can have Ring of Honor stuff, you can have TNA stuff, you can have WWE stuff, you can have territory stuff, you can have Japanese stuff, and it will all be right at the click of a button, which is amazing. You can watch all of this stuff now at a click of a button and see. If you don't like what you're watching now, there's so many options for you, and it's a great time to be a wrestling fan, basically.
Well, not just that, it's a great time to learn about it. Like, again, coming in, I can go into anything. I see a guy, I'm like, let me watch 10 fights he's been in, right?
Yeah.
And like you said, you're on YouTube and you just go down rabbit trails, and every single one you're learning his trade and what he really brought to the ring. It's no longer, again, watching it from these eyes. It's no longer just what was the coolest move he had? It was what was the coolest thing he was doing overall? What was his shtick that nobody else was doing? What was it that made me love him every time I saw him and want to cheer and boo and do all this stuff he's doing? Because it's not just the flips off the ropes anymore, right? It's the whole package. That's what you're going to appreciate.
I love guys that, it's a lot of people. If you ever listen to some of the guys that are kind of the best storytellers in the business, that's a lot of what it is. I always go with Jake the Snake Roberts. Even when he was at his worst, if you ever watch that movie Beyond the Mat, and it's just a terrible way to see Jake the Snake Roberts, but he talks about it. He goes, it's not my moves. He goes, it doesn't start when I get in the ring. He goes, it starts kind of as soon as I come out. Truthfully, he's like, it kind of starts the moment just before I get out the curtain.
Mhm.
But as soon as I get out the curtain, it's not just, okay, I go in the match, I have the snake, I hit the DDT, and I do that. No, it's the way I walk. It's the way I move my head. It's the way I move my hair. It's the way, I do everything I do it for the character. And I always thought that was really cool, like how he said it like that, because it's true.
Yeah.
Like, it's not, going along with what you just said, it's not just one thing. It's your favorite guy is your favorite guy because he does, you might have taken notice of him because he did this one thing. But then all of a sudden you start watching him, and like, kind of how we talk about, we all have a favorite superhero. Everyone has a favorite superhero. But your favorite superhero isn't your favorite superhero because he has a cool costume. Like, a cool costume might be what got you into him. But, like, Spider-Man is so popular.
The only person other than Boba Fett's the one that you can always claim that. Boba Fett just looks cool. Right?
Boba Fett, yeah. He has one line in 3 movies.
Awesome. Yeah.
But but like Spider-Man's always one of those ones that I use. Like, okay, yeah, he's got an awesome costume. But the reason why Spider-Man is so popular is because he's relatable.
Yeah.
Everyone knows what it's like to be down on their luck at points. And that's the epitome of Spider-Man.
We've all been there. Yeah. So,
yeah.
like, one of my favorite guys, an indie guy, I'll do a quick plug for him around here, is this guy, Aaron Arsenal. He's the hipster hunk, and he plays off the Seattle hipster thing with the big, hooked mustache.
He's got the handlebar, the twisty handlebar mustache. I love it.
With a man bun and everything, and he's a prick. He's like the ultimate heel. Like, you hate him, but you love him, and he's so good in the ring. But tiny little details. This is one that I give him so much credit card for. When he's selling merch, all of his stuff is $19.99 or $24.99. Okay, so you go up and you give him like a 20, and you're like, "Oh, don't worry, I don't need the change." He looks at you, he goes, "No, you need the money more than I do," and he gives you a penny back. He just, every single person, he's like, no, look at you. You need the money way more than I do, and he'll give you a. He's got like
5 rolls of pennies.
He's got a chain purse, a little chain purse. He pulls out, little chain purse, and he gives you a penny back. And I'm like, I just love that. It's such a funny touch, and it's hilarious to go up to. And like, I've only had one interaction with him really out of character, because he stays in it the whole time, and he's very nice. He somehow is like mean and nice at the same time, like pose for pictures. It is like, you can tell. But like, the one time we actually had like a real conversation, I was like, "Hey, I'm going out to Seattle next week. Like, do you have any recommendations where to go?" He just pauses, like, "Oh my gosh, really? Where are you going?" He's like trying to tell me all the places to watch wrestling out there. He's real there. So I'm like, "All right, Steve, only interaction we've had outside of character."
I mean, that's kind of the world of pro wrestling, man.
Yeah,
that's how we live nowadays. Oh man! But I'm gonna take us to close this out now.
Good.
Honestly, this has been so much fun.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Brock, busy, if you want to hop on Coal Mine, we're gonna be recording in 30 minutes. If you want to jump back on for a bit,
I think I'm going to.
Good.
So this has been a lot of fun.
Of course,
I loved having you on, man. We have to have you on more now, because now we've set this precedent. You are clearly part of the Lariat family, as always.
Oh, yeah.
The Legion is growing every day.
If I don't have the Peacock logged in right here, which I think I do something else, I'm texting you so I can get it, so I can just binge watch some old stuff this weekend. Wait, don't
I'm just gonna give you a list at some point.
Do it. I'd really appreciate that.
I'm just gonna give you a list.
No, that's what I need.
Yeah, I'm gonna give you a list of some stuff to watch.
It's not just about getting in the ring and doing that training. I got to learn the characters and see what they did and learn how to love them.
You got to learn the history, man.
Yeah, amen.
So, folks, I guess that's it for us. Brock, you got anything you want to give out closing? Coal Mine, go listen.
Yeah. You guys know where to find us. They post our stuff. Come check us out. We're always looking for new people to call and do stuff and have some fun with. Yeah, and you'll see
link in the description below.
You'll see Steve on this next episode coming up. It'll be dropping probably this Monday, which I think by the time you post this one, ours will always be out. So go look for us right away. It'll be out this week. That's Coal Mine. You can find us on Spotify, Apple, wherever, and any link they post. But yeah, keep checking us out. You'll hear me back on here. Like he said, we love working together. We got a couple fun things coming up in our future where I think we're doing more collaboration. Even
We're
more with
absolutely
Lindsay
doing more
stuff.
collaboration.
We might be meeting up in Vegas too, which will be sick if we do a joint
I think
podcast.
I think so. I think we're gonna try to get Lindsay Jordan back on here some more.
Yeah.
Get her out here.
No,
I think it's just gonna be a good time.
Created a little family. I love it. The coal mine Lariat connection.
That's what we're doing, man. It's gonna be amazing.
Sick, man.
All right, guys.
Bring us out.
So with that said, Legion, we love you. Just remember, tuck your chin when you bump.